just reinforcing a couple of points that Stephen put in his sort of presentation there. These emerging technologies are vital. Voice search is being used more and more these days, and you're seeing this. And we looked earlier at some of the figures in terms of keywords and importance. Searches are getting longer. People aren't now just searching for personal injury or anything. They're having conversations, so that search they're doing is becoming more and more unique, which provides a massive amount of opportunity for people. There was a stat, I think I picked it up, there was 750 million new searches every single day of the week. That's not 750 million new people coming to marketing searches, that's brand new searches that Google's never had before. And you can tap into those. AI is playing part of our own marketing strategy now. It enables us to sort of be far more nimble about how we operate and where we appear. AI ultimately makes billions of decisions every minute, far more than a human being can, and that sort of drives into some of that programmatic marketing. And like Stephen sort of said there, you do need to have a hand firmly on the tiller when you're doing that, because you'll see costs rising and driving your budgets beyond where you want them to. So technology has a really good place for us. The other area we started looking at a little bit more was actually how social media fits into the activity. This was deemed as one of the second most effective ways that law firms were actually getting out to market. Surprisingly, quite a lot of law firms weren't actually embracing it. We looked across you guys again to see what social media presence that you had, and encouragingly, personal injury firms had more social media presence than a lot of the non-personal injury firms, and they were using it quite well. We put a bit of a rating schedule on how we saw the people using it, and picked up on a number of things of overall rating that we put against the using a broad range of social media activity, and then actually varieties of content within it. And actually looked at then and the last time when people have been posting things on social media, it's no point just having it and sitting it in the background. And encouraging again, a big part of the group were doing it regularly. Most have done it within a day or so of doing it. Scarily, there's one firm out there that set themselves up on social media, and it's been 6 years since their last tweet. Consumers are utilising social media to find out and understand about your organisation, potentially before they even look at your website. So if you're not on there and actively putting messages out, it can actually sort of make put signals out that you might be closed or not actually operating in that area. I'm going to invite Sarah up now. She's from going to give a law firm's perspective of social media and how you can utilise it in your business, as she and her team use it at Stephen Solicitors. So head over to Sarah.
Good afternoon to you all. So as Andy's just said, I'm going to take you through about 10 minutes on how we actively embrace social. So the research indicated, as Andy said, that law firms can see the importance of it, but they're often not embracing and utilising it. So I want to start by giving you a little bit of background as to who we are as a firm, and then which channels we're using, and then how we actually go about utilising social media to amplify all our marketing campaigns. So we were one of the first law firms in the country to be present on Twitter, hence our strong Twitter handle, which is @SolicitorLLP. We have looked carefully at which channels we are willing to be present on. So you'll see from the slide that's on the screen at the moment, we don't utilise every social media channel. We are selective in terms of what we do. We're active on 5 key channels, which are Facebook with its 2 billion users, Twitter with 328 million users, Instagram, which is our only image-based social media platform, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So I want to explain to you how we go about using social, then the importance of what we see with online reviews and how we share those through the channels, and then, which is absolutely crucial, how we actually then measure the impact of social, because it's all very well doing this and celebrating the fact that we're doing it, but is it actually bringing anything into the business? So I'm going to try and centre only on personal injury and clinical negligence examples of what we're posting, as opposed to any of the wider services that Stevenson's offers. Okay, so before setting about actively embracing social media, you have to forgive me, but lawyers are by their very nature sometimes slightly risk averse. So it was important to me before trying to sort of gain buy-in internally that we actually put some key foundations in place rather than just embarking straight out in there with it. So one of the key things to have is a good sound social media policy that your staff all acknowledge and have read and understand. Then we are actually quite reliant as well on the help of our departments inside the firm in terms of actually sharing and engaging with what we're posting, particularly on LinkedIn. So to be able to ask them to do so effectively and for them to feel comfortable in that remit, we felt that we needed to give them some training. So my team go out into the departments and give training on, you know, how should you go about it, what makes a good post, what should you avoid, that sort of thing. We've also had external consultants in giving training internally as well to make that more comfortable. So we mainly run our social media channels centrally in the marketing team because again that gives us a degree of control and visibility of what's being posted out there. So we have all our corporate accounts, those 5 main ones, run centrally with my in-house team. But we do have some department accounts as well. But to help us see what's going on with those at a glance, we utilise the upgraded version of Hootsuite. So we can see across the dashboard what's going on, who's posting what and when. And in relation to who's posting what and when, we think very carefully about the tone of voice and the demographic and what message it is that we're actually trying to give. So just because we've got something to say, we don't think, oh great, that's good, we've got something to say, we'll put it out on Facebook, we'll put it out on LinkedIn, because the audience profiles, as I'm sure you're all aware, are very different. So we tailor what message, we look at the time of the day, the demographic, all those things and take that into account before we then sort of strategically schedule and post to those different accounts. So what do we use social for? We use it as a marketing communications tool in its own right, but then as I said, we then use it to amplify those other marketing communications channels that we have, to really give them an extended reach and voice. So we use it for events, when we're running an event, so I'll show you an example of that next. Corporate social responsibility, the activities that we do there, we actually post that to Instagram. It's our only image-based social media platform that we actually use. We steer away from things like Pinterest, Snapchat and things like that because it's very difficult to show legal services in an image-based environment. So the exception is CSR on Instagram. Then we put our reviews, so we celebrate our reviews. So Stevenson spends quite a lot of time gathering reviews and feedback from its clients. So we will then share those reviews out as well. We run competitions. We do both paid-for competitions and we'll do competitions internally with our staff as well to help them embrace whatever strategy and campaign it is that we're running. We will post our PR and blogs via the various channels to try and get extended reach and visibility of what we've achieved there. And then if we're fortunate to be shortlisted for an award or we win one, we will announce that on social as well. And we also have a very active sort of range of videos and animations. We possibly have up to about 60 now on our YouTube channel. So we will use short down versions of those videos and animations and post those to the accounts with the hope that they will then get clicked through to the full version on YouTube. But then we also use social to listen to what is the market saying. Hence why we have this upgraded version of Hootsuite, so we can tag keywords so we can listen to what the market, the public, our target audience is talking about across the social media channels, then to actually respond and engage with them. So it's a two-way, so it's not just us posting, we're listening and then we're responding and engaging back. So I'll just go into each one of those in a little more detail so that you can see some examples of them in action. So the first one is an event. So next month we will be running an amputation conference in Manchester at the Imperial War Museum. So to try and drive delegates and attendance to that event, we will then share that out on social. For example, unfortunately I was going to play with an animation, but the technology didn't want to play ball. We put an animation together that was hosted on YouTube, and then we shared that on Twitter. We've then done a Facebook boost, which was a paid-for activity that we did. And you might be thinking, well, does that actually generate you anything in terms of volume and activity? Well, just as an example, when we shared our Twitter post last week, a charity saw that post, retweeted it to their 58,000 followers. So that type of thing gives you an indication of just how far you can extend your reach, as opposed to some of these traditional channels that some firms are still very much attached to sort of utilising. So then if we go on to our next example, it looks like a toy cut on screen, is our corporate social responsibility activity. So I mentioned that it's quite difficult to show legal services on more image-based platforms like Instagram, Pinterest, just to name a few, because it is very difficult to show visual work of legal services really in an appropriate way. So Stephenson's has had a corporate social responsibility forum for about 7 years now. So they're very active in terms of doing work in the community. So it's a very visual sort of thing. So it lends itself to Instagram, I felt. So it's our only exception where we actually post, and all we post to our Instagram account is corporate social responsibility activity. So, for instance, at the back end of last year, our clinical negligence team were out assisting a cerebral palsy charity by renovating a garden. So we put the pictures of that up there. This car on screen is us running a staff competition for the children of the staff at the firm, where they had to design a car in line with BRAKE, the road safety charity, for Road Safety Week. We're just starting to build up. We have got sort of quite low numbers so far on Instagram. We've only been on it for about 6 months. But it is being engaged with, and one of the key functions as well is internally. It helps build morale of our staff. So a lot of our staff are actually following this account, which allows them to understand what campaigns we're running, and also to sort of boost morale and motivation so that they can see what we're doing in the wider community. So it's a good communication tool internally as well, really. Then, if I go on to reviews and us responding to reviews, I mentioned at the start, we're very keen on trying to get feedback online. It's something that cannot be ignored in today's market, really, for SEO benefit and visibility. So Stephenson's uses 3 main ways of gaining feedback. We use Trustpilot. We're actively trying to get Google reviews and our own client survey feedback. So in order to celebrate those reviews and get even wider acknowledgement and help with the buying cycle to convince people, you know, they should come to us for a service, we will again share those out on social. But we don't just choose randomly where we're going to do it. Again, comes down to that strategic thing of looking at the time of day, of when we're going to post something, the day of the week. So as an example, there's a Trustpilot review up there. We would tend to share that on Trustpilot Tuesday. It has its own hashtag, so if Trustpilot will then retweet us and share that with their following, that is absolutely fantastic because they have an absolutely massive audience. So it's a good way of leveraging a positive review rather than just putting it on your website, putting it as a case study. We then try and share it out on social and dot them around in amongst our other messages. So we're aiming for, when we're sharing on social, 7 out of the 10 messages that we're giving tend to try not to be selling. Hence why we're often sharing like things about our work in our community and things like that, because it should be, you know, wide enough. And so all these different things I'm showing you, like sharing the events, CSR, reviews, it's trying to dot round the messages so it doesn't get monotonous basically. Then here, I mentioned at the start, we run competitions over social. Most of the examples I'm giving you are non-paid for examples, but we do run paid for examples in different areas of our services. They can be great because people really engage with things like a competition. This one here is an example of our clinical negligence team taking part in Hats for Headway. So we are showing, you know, that we are supporting this charity with an internal competition where they have designed some absolutely fabulous hats. People like posts like that. It shows personality of the firm. Then I mentioned that we are very active in terms of how many videos and animations we have. So if we're running a marketing campaign, we always try and have a video, if we can, tied in with that campaign, with all those other marketing communications channels that we have. So on screen you'll see there's a client talking about a cyclist accident that he had, and then we've got another gentleman up there that had an accident at work. So to really leverage that video content, obviously it's great to have it on YouTube, which is the second largest search engine next to Google, so that's fantastic, getting a huge reach there with that audience. If we didn't have any video content or animation on YouTube, we would miss quite a significant chunk of that audience. But obviously we want to really make the most of these testimonials and things that we've got. So we will have shortened versions produced for each of the social media channels. And like I say, we wouldn't necessarily post to Facebook or each individual one. We would decide what was most appropriate. We'd use a leading clip then to then drive that traffic into YouTube or onto our website, because it shows that if you have video embedded in your website, time on site increases significantly if someone can see video on there. So we use it to amplify the video content and the animations that we've had to make that work harder. Then we are often commissioning our own research where we can from a PR perspective. So the example you've got on screen there was research that we did into whether the public could spot the signs of diabetes. And then we turned that into an infographic. So we will get the national coverage obviously first, and then we will try and then drive that through on social to say, look at these leading headlines, it positions us as an expert in the market. So we want our audience on social to understand that element really. And then I mentioned at the start, it's all very well doing all this activity, but we need to be able to measure it, to put some return on the time, because this is, as I said, non-paid for activity. So it is internal time that's being used as opposed to in the main budgetary time, but it still needs measuring, because we could spend that time on something else, another marketing communications channel. So the main things that I tend to be interested in looking at are not necessarily the fans and the followers so much, they're important, but they're more a vanity rather than a sanity measure. I'm more interested in looking at things like the sentiment. Do people direct message us after we've put out one of these posts on whatever it may be? You know, are they engaging? Are they liking it? Because if we put all these things out and nobody engages or likes it, it's pretty pointless. And actually then the following numbers will go down. But then we're also extremely interested to see whether it's bringing any traffic onto our website as well. These social media channels account for Stephenson's, so they are in the top 5 deliverers of sending traffic onto our website. So they are key in terms of driving traffic on there. I can see that in Google Analytics. I'm looking at and I'm monitoring that quite often. And then the holy grail is, does it actually bring anything in? Does it actually derive a response? Does this activity, putting these things up there, make somebody want to pick up the phone or write an inquiry or chat with us online or whatever it may be? So to look at that, I make it as easy as I can in terms of a time and efficiency perspective. There's quite a few measures there. Hootsuite makes that nice and easy for my team. We have a dashboard looking at the analytics that we will then look at those measures and see, and we monitor them. So we won't just look at them in isolation 1 month. We look at them month to month, year on year to analyse, you know, are we doing it right basically. But to get at the monetary return, I mentioned that we need to see the calls that are coming in, we need to see the forms that are completed. So how do you do that from social media? How can you see that? We use a call tracking product called Reader Analytics, so that we can see, with that product, we can then see through analytics code whether somebody has picked up the phone or written a form. It tells us concretely whether that's come from social media activity. I'd like us to get to the position, my next step with it is, in terms of being able to really monitor and measure, we are just looking at trying to get full attribution modelling. At the moment, Stephenson's looks at the last derived marketing action that brought us an inquiry, whereas I want to give value to all the different stages in the journey, in the client journey. So if I'm looking on average of what a client does before they become a client, sorry, they may have about 6 different interactions with us. So they might look at a social media post, they might do an organic search, they might look at a pay-per-click advert, they might click through from a Twitter post. At the moment, we only give value to the last click, but that's not really right, because then it devalues all those other 5 other stages in the journey. So we need to give some value and weighting to those Hence the importance of why we are actually looking at attribution modelling with this product, linking into Google Analytics, so that we can give value and really understand the fee income that's generated from the interactions that we're having on social. So that's it from me now on that. So I hope that gave you some interesting insight into how we're using it and what we're doing to embrace it.
Thank you, Sarah. Just reinforcing a couple of points that Sarah gave there, some really interesting tips and ideas of how social really helps you as a business and shouldn't just be thought about as a broadcast tool. Incidentally, social will help develop your web presence and your visibility and your rankings. The more you do it, because you're producing content for your website, it's going to help in terms of your ranking scores and the way Google views you. But also actually the interaction that you'll have and the engagement in your posts also sends out lots of positive signals to the search engines as well. Time is upon us. There's lots, and I'm going to obviously plug our white paper, but there's hints, tips and advice, more about the research that we've done around the marketing landscape across the legal sector. We could have talked even more about things like TV, how that's changing and becoming evolving in the future. Talking about some of the bits that Sarah actually sort of touched on there in terms of how well firms actually analyse the performance of all their marketing aspects. I suppose the reason we chose the two that we did is that 90+% of firms said their websites were the most important things to their business. They were the ones that they put the most effort and work into. They were the ones that drove most of their responses. The problem that we're seeing from the research that we've done is that many firms are actually sleepwalking into a bit of a time bomb. And if they don't take action now, marketing in 2020 will be a whole different ballgame. So if you're reliant on your website as a route of leads, inquiries in your business, hopefully you can take something away from today to go and have a really good look at the performance of your current website. Because quite frankly, unfortunately, when I started the question at the beginning, are marketers in the legal sector ready for 2020? Our research suggests most are struggling in 2017. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. The question that springs to my mind is, Stevenson, what you do is great. You're obviously totally committed to marketing because they have a marketing professional as a partner. Not many firms do that. And yet there'll probably be a lot of firms in the room who think, well, I don't have a marketing department, I can't afford a marketing department, I can't afford branding great. How do I start at least making things a bit better? Beyond, obviously.
Beyond the direct route to saying...
Go to the first one, yeah. We take that as read.
It's finding somebody in the organisation to take responsibility for marketing. It doesn't necessarily at times need to be a fully functioning marketing team of 7, 8, 10 people, but it's having the right people focusing on it. Interestingly, before this event, I put a post on LinkedIn just saying I was preparing my presentation, and I got quite an interesting comment from somebody that works in marketing and has done for many years, and they've historically applied for jobs in the legal sector and said it's like a closed shop, and that then breeds a sort of, doesn't bring any freshness to what they're doing. So I suppose it's taking and finding the right person to come in and drive the marketing activity and not see it as a cost centre, more than it's an investment in revenue.
Well, Sarah, how do you move that from the idea of the marketing person, anyone as a fee trainer rather than a fee earner?
So do you mean,
well, how do you convince, even if you're signed up, how do you convince your partners that it's just going to cost, we're earning all this money and then they're just going to flush it down the toilet with their clever marketing gizmos that they're doing?
Well, with celebrating the successes by putting like numbers to it, that's why I was saying, the measurement of it is so important. So if you want the buy-in and you want people to actively engage on social, you need to show some good sound metrics to say, you know, this isn't just a time issue. This will drive traffic to the site. It will generate conversions. And if you have got a smaller team and you don't have an in-house marketing team, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily be a marketer starting it off. It just needs to be someone that's maybe had some training on it. It's somebody that takes control and ownership of it. It's not done sporadically with different people dipping in and out of it, and it's just built up gradually. That's what I would say.
And just adding to that, I mean, the beauty of the age we live in, data geek, everything is trackable these days. Everything is trackable. So how do you convince the people that have got the purse strings that what you're doing is right? You start small, you test, you put a limited amount of budget in, you refine, you work on. Marketing isn't ever it starts, it concludes, it's done activity. It's a continual evolvement. And when you've proven the return on investment, or proven that it can't be done in that one, you haven't burnt millions of pounds. So firms that might sort of think about TV, for example, we need to be on TV. That's a very expensive exercise to do. You are going to invest big bucks in that. But most things, particularly the digital age these days, you just try it and move on.
That's very true. I'd agree with that. But and also, it's putting your hand up if something doesn't work as well. You know, sometimes I might have to say that we tried this with the test budget. It hasn't maybe been appropriate for the target audience. So I think it's important for people to see internally as well that actually you're willing to say, I tried it, it didn't work, it wasn't the best method for us. Let's try this instead. You know, we particularly find this, we're testing a lot. I know I spoke a lot about non-paid for activity, but when I'm looking at deploying a paid for activity, you know, it's changing all the time. Facebook are offering all sorts of different paid for activities all the time. We have tried some sometimes, and it has had very limited results. We actually then won't do it again. And we've had to say, we won't do this again, we'll do something else.
And yeah, we've got sceptics, and I'm sure there's some sceptics still in the room. But according to your report, Andy, loads of people are still putting money into print advertising where you can't track anything. So, why? How? Why? Tell me.
I think ask lawyers that. Print is still trackable, and it certainly is. I think it's often sometimes seen as a cheap route to market. It's the way we used to do it. Let's continue doing that. I mean, the thing that the report highlighted as well was when we asked firms, do they track and monitor their marketing? I can't remember the stat, I think 60% said they do, 40% said they don't. And then when we actually got into the 60% and said, well, what do you do to do it? Well, it's a gut feel, or we think that worked, so that's not tracking. That's sticking your finger in the air and saying, we think it worked. We think that might have happened. I imagine people's print budgets will fall dramatically now. Yellow Pages have stopped printing, thankfully. I thought it'd stopped printing years ago, to be honest, but it did surprise me when, in some degree, when that came out and the questions that we asked, so much money was going.
And it was particularly striking that most people recognised it wasn't a very effective method of doing it, and yet they kept on doing it because that's against the definition of madness.